Welcome to the program Unfiltered, where we interrogate the issues that affect the greater populace in Zimbabwe. We get to separate that noise from the facts and interrogate those very issues while we get to see how this and many other issues make sense. My name is Monica Chanda, and today we will be looking at a very critical issue which has to do with skills and development. And how does this contribute to the greater economy of Zimbabwe and to that vision 2030? Looking at skills and development, help us welcome to Unfiltered the Honourable Minister, Professor Paul Mavima. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Monica, and I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Let's get straight into skills, audit and development. Talk to us about this ministry and why there was that need to create a ministry such as this.
This ministry, Monica, just like the architecture of the executive arm of government, is really a brainchild of His Excellency, the President, who is the executive authority in Zimbabwe. And he has seen it fit in his wisdom that there was need for a ministry such as this one. This is why we are here. We have a mandate that is coming from the head of state and government to do basically two things. First of all, to discover, analyze the skills gaps that exist in our economy. And I mean comprehensively discover, to cover the public sector, to also cover the private sector, to cover even the non-formal sector, which are really the three sectors that move a country forward. So the first aspect is to discover the skills gaps, but also to say, which is the second aspect of this ministry, what do we need to do in order to bridge those gaps in skills from the perspective of current skills that are needed, but also looking into the future to say what skills are we going to be needing in the future, and then coming up with programs and recommendations to say how do we meet these needs. Our guiding principle really is to say, how do we get to Vision 2030, which has been so eloquently articulated by His Excellency. And we also come from a perspective that says human capital is what gets us to our national aspirations. In fact, in our book, human capital represents our foundation. It is our heritage. Everything that we have will be possible in terms of our aspirations, in terms of the developments that we need to take place in all sectors. They will be possible only to the extent that we employ the human capital of this nation to move those programs. Without that, we cannot achieve the aspirations of this country.
Okay.
So basically the ministry is about identifying the human capital needs for us to move forward.
Now, identifying those human capital needs, I know you recently completed the first phase of that skills audit, and there were certain consultations. But before we get to that, talk to us about how you would probably describe the landscape of our skills, the potential of our skills in Zimbabwe. Are we churning out the right kind of potential skill set that can be competitive, especially looking globally right now?
Monica, in our discovery journey, we already have a baseline, which is the 2018 audit that was undertaken by the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, and really looked at the higher level skills And that indicated to us that we have serious skills gaps in areas such as engineering, for example, about 93% gap. In areas such as medical sciences, again, very big gaps in the 90 percentiles. In areas such as agriculture, the various skills that are needed in order to optimally move our agriculture forward, I think it was about 88%. And then add to that, the industry is saying the graduates that are coming out of our training institutions may not be sufficiently prepared to meet their own demands. So there is the numbers given in the through the percentiles that I have just referred to, but there's also the aspect of those who are being churned out of our institutions. Are they sufficiently prepared to undertake the various mandates that they are supposed to when they go into industry? And the answer is, to a very large extent, no. And this is what really is now driving us to say, how do we deal with these issues in order to make sure that Zimbabwe has the human capital to achieve upper middle income status by 2030, but also looking beyond 2030. How do we put this country on a trajectory that is really going to give us exponential growth to where we become one of the best countries in the world.
But then, of course, Honourable Minister, granted, you've given us those percentiles, those statistics, and that first phase was completed in just over 2 months. And one would say, would you say that was even ample time enough to actually collect the data, to look at the deficits, the gaps?
I think we are, there's a bit of misunderstanding. What we have really done over the last 2 months, in fact, over the last almost 3 months, which is from February this year up to about April, was to do an initial consultation.
I will have to let you hold that thought.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that point again, but once again, this is the program Unfiltered, and we are hosting today on the program the Skills Audit and Development Minister, Professor Paul Mavima, as we are looking at skills and development in Zimbabwe. Where are we? The program is Unfiltered. Welcome once again, and this is the second segment, and we are hosting the Honourable Minister of Skills, Audit and Development, Professor Paul Mavima, and we're trying to have an appreciation, understanding, where are we as a country when it comes to churning out the right kind of skills, the right kind of human capital, which will be critical even in terms of achieving that upper middle income economy. And just before the break, we were talking about the first phase, which was completed, and I asked, was that ample time in terms of collecting the information with regard this issue around the skills?
This, the first aspect was really laying the foundation for a much more comprehensive and rigorous skills audit. This was a consultative process with almost all the important stakeholders who can make a contribution to a credible audit to be done. I will tell you that we consulted with all the sector ministries and all the stakeholders that are associated with each ministry. So if it was a Ministry of Information, for example, we would have ZBC and all the other parastatals that are associated with the ministry. coming to that consultation process. We also made sure that we reached out to all the National Employment Councils, 46 of them in this country, and these represent the various sectors of this economy. We reached out to religious associations, organizations. They had their own day. We reached out to associations of people with disabilities. So we reached out to almost all representatives of the Zimbabwean
so this
people.
Was covering the whole country?
This was covering the whole country. It was a national consultative process. And it has done two things. First, it's almost like the initial methodology of focus group in the audit. And these consultations have already started indicating to us the persistent shortages in skills that are affecting the various sectors. But they have also started making suggestions as to what needs to be done in order for us to reach optimal levels in the provision of skills that are needed to carry this nation forward. So we have really started to understand the skills ecosystem in this country. And it's going to help us now crafting the methodology that we'll use in a very comprehensive as well as rigorous skills audit, which we think will be ready, done by the end of this year.
Talk to us about what kind of format or how are you intending to address these gaps, and looking at those consultations and the stakeholders that came to the table to actually help you identify what are some of the issues that are being raised in order for you to address, and what are you tapping into?
Okay.
Talk to us about that.
Again, the gaps are still coming out. But this time we are appreciating that these gaps are actually across the board, from the lowest level skills. In some communities, you want a plumber, you can't get a plumber. Yeah, you want those who work as assistants in high-level construction programs, you can't get them. You want boiler makers who have cutting-edge knowledge about that profession, and you can't have them. This is a situation, for example, at Manize, which is really a high-tech steel manufacturing company there. We are beginning to see that we will need to upskill our boiler makers in order for them to operate in the environment that has been set there. So we are beginning to see from the consultations that we have these problems that need to be resolved. We are also seeing that we have to look comprehensively at the whole, training and skills impartation architecture, from primary and secondary education to our technical and vocational institutions, to our polytechnics, to our universities, so that we make recommendations for them to be positioned to give us skills needed currently in order to meet Vision 2030, but also skills for the 21st century, given the changes that are taking place. And
this 21st century, are we looking at digital skills? Because we are looking at a world, the global environment as we speak is looking towards ensuring that skills that are being churned out are innovative. You're bringing innovation. We're living in a world where we have artificial intelligence, for instance.
Yes. We as Zimbabwe have to really take that very seriously. and there has to be collaboration between the Ministry of Skills Development and the Ministry of ICTs, and then also the ministry is responsible for education to make sure that our learners, our students are being prepared to really have a basic understanding of things such as coding, the use of AI, for example, even the development of AI applications. We have to gear ourselves up so that we are not lagging behind. Currently, I will tell you that in Africa, I think there are 4 countries that are leading that race, and Zimbabwe needs, again, to propel ourselves to be one of those leading countries. But currently, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, Nigeria have been doing this. To some extent, Rwanda. Zimbabwe has to join these countries, and because we already have an advantage of having the most educated in terms of literacy, numeracy, anything that you can think of, because we have a population that already has this good foundation, we can quickly develop programs to make sure that Zimbabwe is churning out skills that are digitally related. We are in an information economy.
And how does this trickle down to the greater part of the country, the communities? Because when we are discussing these initiatives and these different programs, a lot of the time we have different voices that voice out and say, it's normally the urban populace that tends to benefit from this.
Our program that we are doing is going to look at every aspect of the economic as well as social development of this country. I will tell you, for example, that we have a department that is looking at rural, digital, as well as technical skills, which means it's going to go down to the ward level and say what is needed in terms of making sure that those wards are not left behind as we move towards Vision 2030. So our definition is comprehensive in terms of both urban, rural, and cognizant that we should bridge the gaps that exist between rural and urban.
Well, the conversation still ongoing, and we are still going to interrogate these and other issues. It is about skills and development, and it is about ensuring that the country has the right kind of skills that make you very competitive, not only in the region, but globally. We'll be right back. This is Unfiltered. Welcome back. This is the third and final segment of the program, Unfiltered, as we get to filter out that kind of information which is probably circulating out there and making sure that you get the facts at hand. We do, of course, have the Honourable Minister of Skills, Audit and Development, Professor Paul Mavima, to help us understand his ministry as well as understand where the ministry is in terms of looking at where we are as a country in ensuring that we are very competitive and we're churning out the right kind of standard of skills for all cross sections of the economy. There are some training programs undertaken, Honourable Minister, by various institutions in the country. As your ministry, working with these graduates in order to curb the unemployment gap and even looking at issues of both public and private to ensure that they get employed, but they're not just getting employed, they're also bringing in the right kind of skills which will be productive.
Yeah. What we are dealing with, Monica, is really part of a bigger puzzle that the Second Republic is working on. And you have actually started seeing in the macroeconomy, for example, an upturn with things that are happening in the various sectors. In mining, for example, the achievement of the 12 billion milestone. In agriculture, moving towards the 8 billion milestone. In tourism, again, there are milestones that have been set. So it's part and parcel of a bigger scheme of things under the Second Republic to move our economy to a high performance. And some of the things that you are referring to with regard to some graduates not being employed were a function really of the downturn that had happened in the economy. 20 years, more than 20 years of downturn, mainly as a result of economic sanctions and other factors. But now we are beginning to see that upturn. What we then need to do is to make sure that there's the human capital that is needed for that upturn to be sustainable. That's what we are working with. We also need to reorient the focuses of our training institutions, be it universities or polytechnics or even vocational training institutions, to areas of need, high need, in order for us to move there.
Have you identified those areas?
We are in the process. Part of the audit will identify those. But we already know that, for example, the STEM sector, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, is an important area for innovation, for the Zimbabwean economy to push itself in an innovative way to high performance. We need to focus on those areas. We need to focus less in areas where we have seen that there is oversupply. Business management, for example, there is an 18% oversupply as established in 2018. We need to emphasize that there are areas of humanity, education and training, which we have also found to be in oversupply. But there are other areas in that same, general area that where we have an undersupply. So we have to continue to tweak and reorient the training programs that we have, and making sure that they are also producing the specific skill sets among these graduates that will be attractive and useful in industry. So it's a process that requires a whole of society kind of dialogue to take place. Industry, training institutions, various other institutions that rely on what is being produced by our training institutions, saying this is what we need and this is what we should have. Then we should continue to scan the international environment for the changes that are taking place in terms of technology, and making sure that Zimbabwe is placed where it can produce those who will give us a competitive advantage in terms of efficiencies in our industry so that we can compete.
But that competitive advantage, while you do have a background to academia, and one would say, what contribution would you be adding to ensuring that we have the right kind of graduates? There are issues around, it's not every graduate or it's not every cross-section of the population of Zimbabwe which is academically gifted. We have the creative space, we have creatives, we have sport being $1 billion business, for instance.
Yes.
How does the skills audit, how does the ministry also tap into that?
Remember, I said we are looking at the entire ecosystem. And you will realize that there are reforms that are taking place. For example, continuous reforms that are taking place in primary and secondary education. In fact, This is a continuation of a process that started around 2014 with the competence-based curriculum. We have rechristened this curriculum to heritage-based curriculum. The idea of pathways is already incorporated into our education system at the primary school level, where pupils or learners with talents in the various areas, like the more technical and practical, the sporting, the performance arts, are now being shepherded in those areas, and being helped to flourish because of these various pathways. Another thing which we should mention, which is very important, is that a more academic-oriented and more theory-oriented curriculum has left about 71% of our learners at O level being labeled as failures. Because only, for example, last year, only 29% passed with 5 O levels or better. But there is a way in which we can impart skills in the areas that you are talking about now, the creatives, the performance arts, through an education system that values that and nurtures people towards making sure that their talents have flourished in those areas.
We would have loved to have you for a longer period of time. Maybe 30 seconds just to tap into your thoughts on brain drain. We have a lot of labor flight.
Yeah.
Your thoughts around that?
We had a lot of labor flight, mainly because of the macroeconomic condition that prevailed. And sooner rather than later, we'll begin to see people coming back because of the upturn that I talked about. But we also have to say, as a country, let's pull our efforts together to build our nation. And Zimbabwe and even other nationals will be coming back to Zimbabwe to say that not greener pastures to Zimbabwe.
You heard it for yourself, and we had to bring the Honourable Minister of Skills, Audit and Development to help us understand his ministry, as well as understand the vision towards creating the right kind of skills for Zimbabwe and the rest of the world. Until next time, let's not forget that we are about ensuring that leaving no one and no place behind, and even through the Ministry of Skills, Audit and Development, the Honourable Minister speaking to working to ensure Zimbabwe has a content human capital that can usher the country to an upper middle income economy by 2030. It is, of course, Vision 2030. Until next time, it has been an absolute pleasure, Honourable Minister. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Monica. And indeed, thank you, Zimbabwe.
Let's keep it unfiltered. And to the crew behind the scenes, keep it logged on to ZBC TV as we filter out those issues. The name is Monica Chanda. It's goodbye.